What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Going the Distance podcast presented by ImmaculateSports.com. Twitter's at ImacSports.
Instagram is also at ImacSports.
TikTok, YouTube, Immaculate Sports. It's episode 269. We're back after a week and plenty to talk about. Again, last week we were going to go through some playoff predictions for the NFL. We saved that for one more weekend. We haven't really talked about who are real Super Bowl contenders in a while now, so that should be a fun experiment.
Yeah, dealing with the sickness this past week, so it's probably best to just not do the episode instead of powering through it. So this week, doing some status check stuff in the NFL, playoff predictions. I don't think we've done since the beginning of the season, so that'll be fun to do. Before we get into that, we got our openers to talk about, and I'll let you go ahead and get first because there's some big college football news this past week.
Yeah, maybe the biggest piece of news that wasn't a part of pro sports, we got James Franklin already hired, Virginia Tech. And, at first I didn't really want to believe all the rumors. Like, let's just wait till we get to the offseason. This guy literally just had, a complete meltdown in Penn State. But when you think about it, dude, this is a guy who most people would probably consider a top 25 coach in the nation, now going to Virginia Tech, who is a big reason why the ACC has been so bad these past couple of years. They haven't been good. Florida State hasn't been good. Virginia is finally kind of good again. Carolina still sucks. NC State still sucks. So this is big, especially when we're thinking about the future, relocation, stuff like that. The ACC, if they could get Carolina, Vatech, Clemson, and some others to get their shit together, make the playoffs a couple times, then the ACC's back, and we don't got to worry about them folding like the Pac did. And also, I just wanted to mention, too, it's been so long since we've talked NFL draft, and considering our two favorite teams, I have a slightly updated ranking list for the quarterbacks. We'll just get right into it real quick, right? There's three guys, I think, right now I'd be okay with going in the first round. We'll start with Fernando Mendoza, 6'5", 225. Kind of reminds me of Joe Flacco or Jared Goff. It's the rocket arm, but really the reason why he's up here is because he's the only guy on this list that throws with touch. He throws beautiful, deep passes. He knows how to beat man coverage. He knows how to fit it in there. Number two right now, I have Ty Simpson. Probably I don't know if he's the second best arm, but the second most dominant quarterback available for the draft this year, we'll say. He reminds me a lot of Derek Carr, actually. Really quick release, but he gets himself into chaos if he's not in one of those grooves where he's getting the ball out quick. And then number three, of course, would be Dante Moore from Oregon. 6'3", little lighter than Ty Simpson. I had my comparison as CJ Stroud in the body of Justin Fields. NFL-level arm talent, beautiful deep ball. But we don't want to get this guy killed. Maybe he goes somewhere where he could sit for a year. And then I know a guy you're probably looking at for your Raiders, round two guy I have, John Mateer, 6'1", 225. There's some Baker in him, but it's mostly Ryan Fitzpatrick. So we'll see where he falls on the spectrum of gamblers on that list. And just very interesting, right? No one's really separated themselves yet. We got Nuss over in LSU. Sam Levitt is probably going to end up leaving. We found out today. Those, if you took him in the third, fourth round, it'd be okay. But that's the order we got right now. And considering both of our teams desperately need a change at quarterback, I thought we'd talk about it for a couple minutes.
Yeah, and I'll talk about that as well, too, before I get into mine. I think this year specifically, actually with a couple of second-year quarterbacks, we're starting to really understand the importance of footwork from a quarterback. Obviously, if you know ball, like that's a big part of a quarterback, knowing how to use your feet when you're throwing or just navigating the pocket as well too. Your footwork matters a ton. And I think the casual sphere is starting to see this as well, too. We're seeing a lot with Bo Nix and J.J. McCarthy right now.
Mm-hmm.
Two dudes that have had some moments of being good, but also a lot of moments of, like, what the fuck is this guy doing? And it all really comes back to their footwork. And if they're sound there, both these guys are a lot better quarterbacks. So I think that's also something that we see more once we get to pro days, combines, whatnot. Just guys' ability to be aware in those spots, and it's something I'm looking forward to. if the Raiders do decide to draft a quarterback in this draft, and looking in that aspect of them and how they can improve, or if they're already good in that spot. Moving on, though, to my opener, and I don't want to call this like the best thing I saw, but it is something I'm passionate about, and it's the A's, because we've had a flurry of moves since the offseason has started a couple weeks ago now at this point. A couple of minor league free agent signings: Nick Anderson, former reliever for a whole bunch of teams, namely the Rays back in like 2020 time. He was really good for them. He's bounced around teams, a couple different teams these past few years. He was with the Rockies this past year. Didn't perform well, but nobody really performs well in Colorado. Minor league deal, invite to big league camp and spring training is all it really is. Same thing with Joey Meneses, who was actually star in the WBC for Team Mexico back in 2023, had some good seasons with the Washington Nationals, spent this past year in AAA for the New York Mets. Not crazy. Obviously, if Joey Meneses is playing first base for us, we are probably in deep shit, and stuff isn't going to be good for us. But a solid depth signing, I guess, but I highly doubt we see him play in the big leagues at all when it comes down to it. And I guess the biggest moves that we've seen today just happened a couple of minutes ago with 40-man rosters being due before the Rule 5 draft occurs, I believe, next month. And the big news that we've seen from that is that Braden Nett, who we got in the Mason Miller trade, was added. Junior Perez, who's been in the A system for a while. Then Chen Zong, Ao Zhuang, I definitely butchered his name, but he got added to the 40-man roster as well, too. Zong actually has some pretty good stuff. Right-handed pitcher, pretty solid, maybe perhaps reliever at some point in his career. But the big two ones were that J.J. Bleday got designated for assignment, and Daniel Susac, 2022 first-round pick from the A's, was not added to the 40-man roster and therefore is eligible for the Rule 5 draft. First off, looking at Bleday, outfield spot. When you think A's outfield, you have two pretty much locks, not including Rooker, because I think he's pretty much a significant DH at this point. Soderstrom, Butler are guarantees. You have guys like Colby Thomas, Denzel Clark, and I think this move of getting rid of J.J. Bleday really solidifies Clark and Thomas as the guys that they want to move forward with in the future. Obviously, both of those guys are right-handed bats, pretty different player types as well, too. One's bat heavy, one is obviously super glove heavy. But I think the A's kind of signified their confidence in those guys with this move here. And then Daniel Susac. Catchers are interesting. We already re-signed Austin Wynns to a one-year deal as well, too. So he kind of has that backup catcher spot locked at least for 2026. And of course, Shea Langeliers is the catcher that we want to be here for a long time. And I think the move behind this and not adding Susac to the 40-man roster signifies that they're trying to get something done long-term with Shea Langeliers. Because if you weren't going to, what's the point of making this move? Susac was probably going to be the guy that you look at if you were going to get rid of Langeliers or not sign him long-term as the guy who's next up at this position. Getting rid of Susac, or not technically getting rid of him, because he can obviously still come back. Not get drafted in the Rule 5 draft or come back to us once the team doesn't like him, regardless of how it happens. But if him not being there really makes it so Shea's the guy. And if Shea gets hurt, you have those shorter term Austin Wynns type guys. But the long term plan seems to be Shea, and hopefully we get confirmation of that as this offseason goes on. And I think every A's fan wants to see him back there playing catcher for the A's for the next 5-6 years at least. And it'd be a pretty cool thing to see from the A's as well, too. So that's my initial thoughts with that. This move literally just came out less than 20 minutes ago. So pretty immediate reaction here to that stuff. But maybe we'll get more context on this as stuff goes on. Winter meetings, David Forrest next month maybe says something about it. But that's what we have is right now. We'll maybe talk a little bit more about some not smaller, but some few moves that we've seen in MLB free agency so far later on in the show.
Yeah. Austin Wynns clearly wins the backup job, right? And he's just the odd man out.
Yeah. You can come across backup catchers quite easily as well, too. And so wasting another 40-man spot on a third catcher, why do it when you can just go ahead and just bring in somebody else when it comes down to it. Moving on, though, to NFL player, defensive player, and rookie of the week. I just wanted to say pitcher of the week, but it doesn't really make sense in the NFL. Player of the week, Skyler, who'd you choose here for week 11 of the NFL season?
Josh Allen was amazing. He had 6 touchdowns. They beat Tampa Bay, but I'm going to go with Bryce Young, who I think finally earned his wings on Sunday. 448 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, an overtime win against their rival. And this is by far the best game of his career. And he does it against Atlanta, basically destroying their season.
Yeah, I'm used to Bryce Young having like 180-yard performances, a touchdown, 2 picks, maybe a fumble in there. But Bryce Young was dealing against Atlanta. That's not something that I think we've ever said in Bryce Young's career. Like you said, 31 for 45, 448 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. Best game that we've seen from Bryce Young in his career. And it ended with the win as well, too. Carolina is in the playoff race. They're 6-5, very much in the division. Big Monday night game coming up against the Niners. If they win that, I will be shocked. But if they do win that, I think that's a signal to be like, okay, like maybe we should start taking the Panthers seriously. Until then, they're still the same old Panthers. On to defensive player of the week.
Yeah, Myles Garrett has 4 sacks again. They almost beat the Ravens. But I'm going to go with a former Max Sports Rookie of the Week, Cam Kitchens. 2 picks on Sam Darnold, a massive win that puts the Rams in first place. And, you know, if there was one big weakness on the Rams, I would say probably this year they get burned deep sometimes. They did not let that happen against Seattle. They have figured it out since then.
Yeah, I think the Rams definitely had the best defensive performance as a team this week. So why not go with the guy who had the best performance on that team this week? And Cam Kitchens is the guy that I went with as well, too. A couple of picks, 2 of the 4 that they had against Sam Darnold. Maybe those were a bit more Sam Darnold focused than Cam Kitchens focused, but who cares? Big day for him, big day for the Rams defense as they put themselves in a great spot going into the second half of the season here. Rookie of the week.
Travion Henderson has 5 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks, Kyle. Imagine that. Your high draft pick with game-changing speed makes the offense better. I can't believe it. Great job, Mike Vrabel. Tedero McMillan was dominant too, of course. He had 2 touchdowns. But with Henderson, I gave him the nod this week because not only did he dominate last week and we didn't get to talk about him, he had 3 touchdowns against the Jets. He's finally unlocked himself.
Yeah. Although I did see an interview with Mike Vrabel today. He was on like some podcast or something, and he sounded like he was going right back to Ramondre once he's healthy.
Oh, great.
Which seems to be just what's going on there with Travion Henderson. Doesn't matter what he does. He's not going to play. We'll see. I did go Ted McMillan, though. 8 catches, 130 yards, 2 touchdowns for the best game in his young NFL career. Now sitting at 6th in the NFL in receiving yards, I believe. Pretty nuts for a rookie. Also, I don't think he's had his bye yet. Maybe he has. No, I don't think he has yet. Actually, I don't know. I'm tripping so much.
He's 14.
Regardless, great season so far from Ted. Happy to see him doing well. Him and Bryce Young could be a connection we see for some time. We'll see. Who knows? Depends how long Bryce Young decides to be good for. All right, moving on to top 5 MVP check-in. This stuff's always fun to do. And we actually are doing the same script of the episode as we were going to do last week. And it was interesting seeing how my top 5 would have changed just from week to week. And it really didn't change much.
Me neither.
But we'll get right into the honorable mentions if you have any. Is there anybody that you want to talk about before we get into the 5?
Yeah, Christian McCaffrey's going to be in the conversation. It's just going to be a long shot considering he's the number 2 running back this year, not the top guy. Baker and Jalen Hurts have really fallen off these past couple of weeks. And still in the top portion of the league is Dak Prescott. So I'll shout him out too. I just am not going to do it.
The 3 guys, honorable mentions. JSN, first of which, having a ridiculous season, on pace to break the all-time yards, single season record. Hasn't had a game where he's had under 79 receiving yards at this season. That's nuts. With also a very like non-pass heavy team like the Seahawks, people know the ball's going to him when they pass, and you still can't do anything about it. So JSN is on there. CMC as well too has just had this ridiculous season where it feels like he's touching the ball 30 times a game. The past few games haven't been as touch heavy, which I think is good because you want to be able to keep him healthy throughout the season. Even with those limited touches, he's been really solid. 3 touchdowns this past week against the Cardinals, and it felt like he was just having an easy game. I know one of them was a 1-yard touchdown after a 99-yard kick return. But regardless, CMC's been great. And then Dak Prescott as well too. Really good game last night against the Raiders. Just an early blemish fumble in the first quarter, but after that, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. He's tied for second in the NFL right now with 21 passing touchdowns. I know he has probably the best supporting cast out of maybe any quarterback except for Matthew Stafford, but regardless, Dak's been great this year. He's not been the reason why the Cowboys have lost, 5 games or whatever at this point. So Dak Prescott, honorable mention, onto our top 5.
All right, we'll kick it off with Patrick Mahomes. This is pretty much the only one that drastically changed over the last couple of weeks because he would have been my MVP if they didn't play so bad against the Bills and the Broncos. But unfortunately for him, Mahomes specifically did play pretty bad in Buffalo. He was okay in Denver this week, but their offense got shut down twice in a row. The one thing that keeps him alive here, I think, is that we have to remember Patrick Mahomes is the reason these guys have even won their 5 games this year. Their team is not that good right now, and it's not because of the system. It's because of number 15. So that's why I'm keeping them alive, and I'm sure they'll still be in the playoff conversation once we get to that in a minute too, and it's all because of him.
Hey, Josh Allen's my number 5 guy, maybe a bit lower than what you have him. 28 total touchdowns on the season, but he does have 7 interceptions and 5 fumbles so far. It feels very like 2021, 2022 Josh Allen like this year, where he makes those crazy plays, and then he has like a dumb turnover that you can really just not excuse. And that's not how it was last year. Last year he was, all the great plays without having, the dumb turnovers. But like the pick that he had on Sunday where he just like shovel passed it straight to a defender was one of the dumbest turnovers I've seen this year. But he then said F you and, proceeded to have 6 touchdowns the rest of the game. And that's why that's why I talk shit about JJ McCarthy and not Josh Allen. Because he was, after McCarthy's first pick, he was on me about talking shit about him. And then Josh Allen threw the pick. He's like, oh, why don't you talk shit about Allen? It's because he's Josh Allen. That's all you really
scored
need.
6 touchdowns and 1.
Exactly. Yeah. So Josh Allen, number 5, and shout out to Alex, I guess. Number 4.
Yeah, I got Josh Allen at the 4 spot. The Bills have only gone 3-3 over the last month, but when they do win, Josh Allen is carrying the entire offense. He's already got 10 rushing touchdowns this season. He does so much for them that he's going to be in the conversation, even though he's turned the ball over a bunch. So we'll see if they can turn things around here, but it's looking like probably not going to win it since he's not as efficient, like you said.
Number 4 for me is where I slot Jalen Hurts. 16 passing touchdowns, 1 interception, as well as 6 touchdowns through the ground so far this year. I think the biggest thing with Jalen Hurts, we saw it in the playoffs be the opposite, but the biggest critic of him is just like how good of a downfield passer is he throughout the game. And this year, I think he's been pretty exceptional at it, and he hasn't turned over the football. He's never really been a guy that, has terrible turnover issues, except for one season in 2023. He's holding on to the football. Big reason why Philly has been so good this year, even with not having that as powerful offense as last year. They just don't turn over the football. Their defense is good, and Jalen Hurts is the steerer of the ship when it comes to the offense. So number 4 for me. Number 3.
At 3, I got Drake May of the Patriots. Top 5 in passing yards, touchdowns, and QBR. Plus, they got a little win streak going right now. Talk about a second year jump. This guy looks like who we thought Justin Herbert was going to be. He's just been incredible. You mentioned he looks like Matt Stafford. Like I just said there, Justin Herbert. I mean, however you want to put it, this guy looks like he's a 10-year vet, and he's one of the youngest players in the league. So incredible. Major reason why the Patriots are going to go to the postseason this year.
Yeah, Drake May's my number 3 as well too. 20 touchdowns and just 5 interceptions, as well as 2 rushing touchdowns. Only 1 fumble, didn't lose it either as well, which is a big part of what he's done so far this year is holding on to the football. Also doing it with one of probably the more questionable receiver cores in the NFL. Stephon Diggs is good. Outside of that, bunch of rookies, bunch of washed up vets is really what he's working with now at this point. In those guys' career, like I said, Matthew Stafford really comes to mind when you watch him. I think when you look at Matt Stafford play, the biggest thing that jumps out is like those off-platform throws where he's getting to a spot that isn't really used to for quarterbacks and still being able to make the throw. Drake May really feels that way. He had a throw against Tampa Bay that came to mind where he was like flushed out to the pocket left, had pressure in his face, swiped across, and then threw it to a receiver running across the middle to convert like a 3rd and 8 or something like that. And it's like you don't see a lot of young quarterbacks that are that comfortable making plays like that. I feel like you see a lot of young quarterbacks that are trying to make a big play like that, but they just from there they mess up and throw a pick or fumble the football. Drake May hasn't done that this year, and that's pretty remarkable to see from a second-year quarterback. I hate saying it, but New England is back, and that hurts.
Yep.
Number 2.
My number 2 player for MVP is Jonathan Taylor. I don't think there's any question about his resume, but unfortunately, he plays running back. And we haven't seen a running back who ran for less than 2,000 yards win the MVP since LaDainian Tomlinson. That was because he had 31 touchdowns. So this is no question about Jonathan Taylor's ability to carry the offense. He's clearly done it all this season for Indianapolis. I just think he's going to need to like keep this ridiculous pace that is nearly impossible if he does want to win the MVP.
Number 2, Matthew Stafford for me. And I know that's probably your guy that you have at number 1. He's been ridiculous this year. 27 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, by far the best ratio that we've seen in his career. He's not taking sacks, only 14 sacks on the entire year. So not a lot of negative plays, a lot of, positive, good situations that he's putting their offense into. And he's capitalizing when it comes down to the red zone. That's what makes the MVP the MVP. You can have, 4,000 yards and 10 touchdowns and not get it. But if you have 3,000 yards and 45 touchdowns, then you're probably more likely to get it. And Matthew Stafford is honestly doing well at both. Right now, he has a ton of yards and a ton of touchdowns. Most passing touchdowns in the NFL by 6. And he has had his bye week as well, too. I know the other 2 guys below him have as well. But regardless, Stafford's been great. Hasn't turned over the football. Has been the best quarterback in the NFL at the very ripe age of 37. And I think it'd be pretty nuts to see a 37-year-old not named Tom Brady win MVP.
Mm.
But number 1 is who?
Yeah, I do have Matthew Stafford at the top right now. Over 2,500 passing yards, on pace for 4,000, like you said. 27 touchdowns, on pace for over 40, like you mentioned. And in a season with so much turnover by the week, I think the Rams are the only team I've kept in the top 5 since week 1. And just in the last 4 weeks, Stafford has 15 touchdowns, 0 turnovers. It's not that Jonathan Taylor doesn't deserve it. It's just that history tells us Matt Ryan wins over Todd Gurley. And that's kind of the situation here.
Maybe it's because I have him in fantasy. But Jonathan Taylor is my number 1. I think it's just so – well, first off, the Colts are, 8-3 at this point in the year? 8-2, whatever. They have a great record. And Jonathan Taylor's the guy that is going to get the football. He's got the 2nd most carries in the entirety of the NFL, and he's still averaging 6 yards per carry. And I know when it comes to a good running back, there's a lot of other things that need to, be put in place. There needs to be a good scheme. There needs to be good blocking. And you need to have, honestly, probably an advantageous matchup, because if he's probably not doing this against the Seahawks, 10 games in a row. But regardless, Jonathan Taylor's been great. He's breaking the big run more often than I feel like we've seen any other running back do it as well. 15 touchdowns in 10 games on the ground, as well as 2 receiving. That also is another aspect. Of 260 receiving yards is on pace to be the most that he's had in his career, except for maybe 2021 when he had 360. But regardless, he's been so good. I don't know if he's quite on pace to get to 2,000 rushing yards, but he's damn close to do that. And I think if he has 2,025 touchdowns, and the Colts are the 1 seed
He'll
or the
probably
2
win
seed
it.
in the AFC, I think it's possible, unless we see Stafford have 40-plus touchdowns and like 2 interceptions, which he could honestly do as well too, which is pretty nuts. Which brings us to our playoff predictions, which is going to be fun to do. Going into week 12 of the NFL season, before we just hop right into the actual rounds, if you want to go through the seeding that you have in each conference, We'll start off in the AFC. I also have the teams that I have that just missed it as well too, so there's a little bit more extra context provided. So you can go through 1 through 7, 1 through 10, whatever you need in the AFC. And if you have records as well too, you could say that.
Yeah. I use the website everybody does too, so I got it all on there. I just had to go through and change 1 week this week, but honestly, we both had pretty good picks this week, so not too far off. We'll start off. I have Denver getting the 1 seed. Not going to change it. I know it was a very crazy thing to do with a questionable quarterback, but hey, dude, they're winning games, so looks like they're going to get a bye in the first round. Also have New England getting a bye too, 2 seed, 13-4, same record. Yeah, they don't really play anybody coming up, so good for them. Another team that's in very good hands. Indianapolis 11-6 wins the South. Then that last team, I have Baltimore. I have them going 10-7. We know that things in their division get really funky at the end of the season, but as of right now, I have them doing very well, 5-1 in the North. Wild card teams, number 5, Buffalo will make it into just 1 game under New England. They play them again too, so they could flip the script here, but I have them going 3-3 in the East, thanks to that Miami loss. Nice job, guys. The 6 seed Kansas City, 11-6. Again, with them, it's just really tough to win the division when you're losing games to Denver and the Chargers. And 7, the last team sneaking in, Jacksonville. So Jacksonville has a tiebreaker over the Chargers, over Houston, and Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's a game behind those guys, but at 10 wins, Jacksonville makes it in for me.
All right, mine get a little crazy. So I'll start off number 1 seed, getting the bye, the New England Patriots. They go 14-3. Probably one of the easier schedules that we see as well too. So I think that factors in. But one of those losses is to the Raiders. Number 2, the Colts go 12-5, won the South, get the division. 3 seed, 11-6, the Denver Broncos get in there. And then the North with the 4 seed is going to be the Cincinnati Bengals that I have going 8-9 and winning the division. It gets really hectic there. Obviously, I have the Bengals winning that Thanksgiving game between them and the Ravens, which I think is going to be huge. I don't like the Steelers long term. I know they're dealing with some injuries now as well too. So I do have Cincinnati getting that, even with the loss this week to the Patriots. Number 5, first wild card, 13-4 is where I put the Buffalo Bills. Even if they split with the Patriots, I don't think their schedule is quite as easy as the Patriots. So 13-4 there. 11-6, 6 seed is where I put the Jacksonville Jaguars. Big win over the Chargers this past week.
Yeah.
I picked them to win. I did not think they were going to win by 35 or whatever it was. So that was pretty nuts. And then the 7 seed, 10-7 is where I put the Los Angeles Chargers. They beat the Chiefs on December 14th. which means that the 8th seed is the Chiefs. They go 10-7, but because of their double losses to the Chargers and a loss to the Broncos as well too, that actually didn't. The loss to the Broncos this past week, but they also lose to the Colts, which is their 7th loss because they're 5-5 right now. Makes it impossible for them to get in if they lose those 2 games, pretty much. So Chiefs go 10-7, 8 seed. They miss the playoffs, which would be absolutely ridiculous. And then after that, Houston 9-8, Baltimore 8-9, and then Pittsburgh 7-10 to round it out.
Okay.
Let's do the NFC seeding.
All right. Well, you know how much I like Matt Stafford this year. My number 1 seed's going to be the Rams, 14-3. So far, I got, no reason since that crazy Mac Jones Thursday night game to go against them right now. Right behind them's Philly, of course, 13-4. They've been able to win the ugly one, so they're also going to be a top seed here. Number 3, this one was really close, and I didn't think it would end up this way, but they do have a tiebreaker over the Bears. So Detroit wins the North, 11-6 for me. And then the last one, Tampa Bay, no shade on them either. I have 11-6, but just under Detroit there. That's the 4 seed for the 4-5 matchup. I have them playing Seattle, 12-5. I imagine Seattle will shake this one off. The Rams are a very tough defense to play. And hopefully Sam Darnold's not seeing ghosts the rest of the season. The 6th seed may be a surprise for most people beginning of the year, but it's hard to not go with Chicago right now. I have them 11-6, same record as Detroit, which would be amazing if they could keep this going, especially on defense. And then the last seed, also 11 wins because of such an easy schedule, San Francisco. They looked incredible against Arizona with Brock Purdy back. I mean, he was taking deep shots too. Didn't look like he was injured at all. But unfortunately, that means Green Bay misses out 10-6-1. So that tie comes back around and just Fs them so hard this season because they had Super Bowl aspirations. Also, I have Carolina just missing out. Another interesting story.
In the NFC for me, getting the bye, 14-3, the Philadelphia Eagles. They've been good. Pretty sleeper as well too, so somehow. But I do have them getting the 1 seed. 2 seed is going to be Seattle, 14-3. I have them having a really good rest of the season. Obviously, that means that they beat the Rams in their later matchup this year, which I think would be a phenomenal game towards the end of the season. 3 seed is actually Green Bay for me, so 12-4-1, bit of a shocker, or not shocker, but difference for me and Scatter there. 4 seeded is where I have Tampa Bay. They go 9-8 and just sneak into the division. I'll get into the rest of those teams in that division in a bit. Number 5, top wild card, the Rams go 13-4, claim that quite easily. I think I even have it's the next team that I have resting their starters. It's Detroit that goes 12-5. Because of their seeding, they rest their starters week 17. Number 7 is where I put the Niners. So they're the last playoff team there. They go 11-6. I've been, I would say, pleasantly surprised because I expected their offense to be good, but more surprised on their defense. Even dealing with all these crazy injuries, they've been able to battle through. Testament to Robert Saleh and the stuff they've done there. And then the team's just out. The Bears, they go 9-8. I think they've been quite fortuitous in their wins so far this season. Fumble from Bill in that Monday night game against the Commanders. Blocked field goal against the Raiders would have cost them a couple games. I think they have a tougher second half back end schedule here, and I have them just missing out at 9-8. Carolina 8-9. I wanted to try to find a way for them to sneak into that division, but they just don't. Dallas goes 7-9-1. I know there's a lot of Cowboys fans that think, they're back after this big win against the Raiders. And while that could be the case, and I do love the moves that they did at the trade deadline as far as bringing in some talent. Quinn Williams is great, but he was going against Nick Putnam, Stone Forsythe, and a bunch of guys that you've never heard of. And that's not saying Quinn Williams is a bad player. It's just saying he was doing it against guys that should not be in the NFL. I think the Cowboys are still a solid team, but rough schedule, 7-9-1, obviously it's just out. Minnesota goes 7-10, and then the New Orleans Saints also go 7-10. I really
Mm.
like Tyler Shuck. He had a good game against the Panthers. I think he's going to have a good second half and get some big wins for the Saints down the stretch. So now that the teams are set, we can move into the brackets. Starting off in the AFC wild card, I guess we'll just do the whole AFC and then get into the NFC after. That way we stay similar there. So 7-2,
Okay.
3-6, and 5-4 in the AFC wild card round. Who do you have and who's winning? Who's moving on?
All right. We'll start off with the 7-2. Jacksonville goes to New England. That is just a really tough place to play, in my opinion. I'm not totally convinced on Jacksonville, even though I have them better than Pittsburgh and the Chargers as of right now. So New England will win that one. The other one, though, is actually a game we get to watch this week. That's Kansas City and the Colts. Indy hosting this one as the higher seed in the playoffs right now. Dude, I don't know, man. Even though I have Kansas City, I'll just, spoil it, right? They're not going to win the Super Bowl. They're not. I don't think they're going to be a first round exit, though. They're going to be Indianapolis.
All right. 7-2 for me is the Chargers going to Indianapolis. And I have the Colts winning that game. They beat them earlier this year. Really wasn't a contest. Chargers O-line is so beat up at this point in the season that I do think it's tough for them to be one of these top-tier teams. 6-3 really does not have a playoff feel. It's Jacksonville going to Denver. Denver wins this game. It's an ugly one, probably like 16-10 at the most. We might be like 7-4 if it really comes down to it. And then a fun one, 5-4, is Buffalo going to Cincinnati. One of those trademarked, AFC QB matchups between Josh Allen and Joe Burrow, hopefully, or it will be Joe Burrow. I don't think Joe Flacco is leading this crazy comeback to get to the division. And I have Cincinnati winning. I do think, like I said earlier, Josh Allen's been prone to some tough mistakes. And if there is that mistake and there is a quarterback and an offense that can keep up with him once he does make that mistake and go crazy, I do think Cincinnati can do it. So I'm going to go ahead and say Cincinnati gets that win there, which means 2-3-4 all win for me. And I'll send it back to you for your divisional.
Yeah,
round.
dude, I don't know why I completely skipped over 5-4. It's
Yeah, that's what I thought. I was like, did I hear 2 games?
it is a very similar matchup to yours. Buffalo will go to Baltimore for mine, and I am going to have Buffalo winning this one. Similar to you, I'm a little worried about Baltimore still too, but even if they make the playoffs, I think that Josh Allen has got their number these past couple of years. So yeah, I
right
got
into divisional
yeah.
round.
Yeah. The only crazy thing here was Kansas City as the 6th seed winning. They are going to my 1 seed Denver, though. That's a very interesting game. Something that we have seen a lot before is that even though they'll lose to somebody in the regular season, that doesn't mean anything in January. I do have Kansas City moving on. They're going to beat Denver. Something that I will go back and forth on so many times. And we'll see one more matchup too, just to make sure. The other game I have, the Patriots hosting Buffalo. So back-to-back rivals here. And I'm going to do the same exact thing. New England might have beaten them last time, but Buffalo, they may have some issues at receiver. It's still so many more weapons on offense. And I think Josh Allen in this situation on the road, he's been there before too. He's been there before. I think he'll beat the Patriots if they face him in the playoffs. So that's another rematch. Kansas City, Buffalo.
Yeah, an exciting way to get to a boring matchup. Or not boring matchup. But same old when it comes down to that in the AFC. My AFC divisional round is very different than what we've used to seeing. 4-seeded Cincinnati goes to number 1-seeded New England. Not a contest. New England wins. Better defense. Offense probably leans Cincinnati, but I do think New England is by far the better team here when it comes down to it. And then 3-seeded Denver at 2-seeded Indianapolis. We have seen this game already this season. Granted, it was in like week 2, so I don't really know how much that can really factor in. I do think the Colts are the better team, though. And with it being in Indy, I think helps them a ton. They could play their game, don't have to worry about that crazy cold weather in Denver, but they will have to in the next round when it's New England versus Indianapolis in the AFC Championship game. You have Kansas City versus Buffalo in the AFC Championship. Who wins? Who's going to the Super Bowl? What is it?
Yeah, maybe an anticlimactic matchup when we're looking at it on paper right now, 5-6. But at the end of the day, this was the game I really wanted to see again because this time Buffalo's at home, and this time they're going to get them. I'm not, lying to you guys. I'm truthful. I don't think Kansas City's going back to the Super Bowl, but in this case, the way the board falls here, I think they would beat Indianapolis and Denver first. Just takes a while to get there. Josh Allen finally has Buffalo back to the Super Bowl. It's been very wild and erratic for them. But hey, it's the same for Kansas City, right? If they get to play New England and they're having a bad offensive line day, they're not going to lose to them. Same thing with Kansas City. Their best O-lineman's not even with the team right now. So I got Buffalo.
My AFC Championship feels like we're back in 2008. The Colts versus New England in New England. Obviously, a cold Foxborough day would be something that's I don't know if I'd call it nostalgic for us because we obviously wanted to see him lose all the time, but it does kind of have that throwback feel to it. But I have the Colts going in there and being able to win the game. I know the matchup is very Patriots heavy here. New England's got perhaps the best run defense in all of football, and the Colts have. I don't know if I'd even call it a run heavy offense, but Jonathan Taylor's their guy. That's who when it comes down to 4th and 1, 3rd and 2, whatever it is, that's the guy who's going to begin the football. And I even think New England's defense in the pass side is good as well too. But Indianapolis, I think, has that slight edge on offense. And I think their defense, as the season has gone on, has shown to be a pretty solid group as well, too. So I will go Indy, getting the victory in New England. A couple of quarterbacks who have not been there as well, too. So I think it's you get a little bit less of that jitter if you were going up against Patrick Mahomes or even Josh Allen or Joe Burrow or Lamar Jackson because they've played in those games before. This would be new territory for both those guys. So I think that kind of washes that. And I think Indianapolis is good enough to go ahead and go to the Super Bowl. Which brings us to the NFC, now that we have a rightful winner in the American Football Conference. Going to the National Football Conference side, 7-2, 6-3, and yes, also 5-4.
Yes.
What do you have here in the wild card?
Yeah, so my 2-7's a pretty good game for being potentially the biggest blowout for Vegas. Philly hosting the 49ers, a game we have seen a lot, usually a little later in the postseason. But I just think Philly is probably the most physical team in the league. They would give the Niners a lot of problems, even if the Niners do, in my scenario, right, figure things out, get a little healthier, win 11 games. Still, this is a rough drop for them. I got Philly moving on, of course. The next one, an NFC North battle, Lions-Bears. Great matchup. I would love to see this one. The Bears kind of feel like the NFC Denver to me a little bit. It's like, I can just imagine like the Jesse Pinkman. I mean, it's like, you can't get away with this. And they finally don't here. Detroit will beat them at home in the Dome. They'll be able to run all over them with Jahmyr Gibbs and not let them get any interceptions, you would hope. 4-5 is another familiar game. We've already seen it once this season. Tampa Bay hosts Seattle. And again, I just think Tampa Bay and their defense at home is probably going to cause some problems for Sam Darnold. For how great he's been, the playoffs are a whole nother level. And I guess I'm saying they haven't really proved it to me yet. If Seattle was hosting this game, that'd be a completely different story. And I know that's what you got coming up.
Yeah, I have a fun wild card weekend. Divisional matchup to start. San Francisco at Seattle. We've seen this one, albeit not in this era of these two teams, I guess you could call it. I know I think it was like 2019, that game that wasn't the playoffs, but Sunday night to end the season, and Jacob Hollister was held up at the one. Obviously, we saw the only best quarterback in the league, game a long time ago now at this point. But this is a long, old school type feel rivalry to it. But it being in Seattle helped a ton. That's probably one of the few spots that the Niners don't have that great road fan base, especially in the playoffs in Seattle. So I'll go number 2. Seattle takes that there. Fun one in the 3-6 matchup as well as 2 as Detroit travels to Green Bay. We saw this matchup in week 1 as well too. So obviously quite a while ago at this point. Actually, we also saw the Niners Seattle week 1 as well. But regardless, I have Detroit being able to win this game. 6-seeded going into Green Bay. I just feel like they're the better team at this point. I don't trust Jordan Love. I really don't. And maybe I don't trust Jared Goff either, but I trust the pieces around Jared Goff a bit more than I do with Jordan Love. And at this point, I think I trust Dan Campbell more than I trust LaFleur. I think his play calling has probably been one of the biggest reasons of why Green Bay has let so many teams in these games, whether it's Dallas, losing to the Panthers, the game against the Giants this past week was honestly closer than what we expected, even with, no Jackson Dart in there. So I'd say Detroit takes advantage here and gets the upset victory. 5-4 is a fun one, not as much bloodbath with the Rams going to Tampa Bay. We have seen this matchup as well too, just not with Baker and Matthew Stafford. I think we saw it with Brady and Stafford.
Yeah.
Maybe even Brady Goff or I don't know. Oh, we did see Brady Goff, but not it was these two teams. Regardless, the Rams get the victory here. Tampa Bay dealing with a lot of injuries, especially, Mike Evans out for the year. I think factors in once it comes down to, this is 3rd and 7. You need to get a touchdown. Who are you going to? Not having a guy like Mike Evans in the red zone is going to hurt you when it comes down to it. And when you look at the other side, Devontae Adams has 10 touchdowns, and it feels like every other catch he has is in the end zone. This isn't even going to Puka Nacua. So I trust when the going gets tough, I'm trusting Matt Staffy and the boys. So they get the 5-seed victory. Technically an upset. I don't think it would be like a money line upset though. On to the NFC divisional round.
Yeah, I'm starting off with one you just talked about. I got the 1-seeded Rams hosting Tampa Bay. And this is actually going to be Sunday Night Football next week, too. So we'll get a pretty good look at it. But yeah, I agree with you, man. No matter who is hosting this game, I'm leaning Rams because I've seen the Rams drop 40 on good teams. I've seen the Rams win ugly games. Tampa Bay, not really been able to get the stops they need. They're a pretty old defense right now. I think the Rams would probably beat them up pretty good on Sunday night. So that's where I'm leaning. 2-3, though. Another game we literally just saw, Philly hosting Detroit. And, we see what happens. And I don't want to clump Detroit into a category, but when you get to January, unfortunately, this conversation always comes up. Can a dome team win in a place like Philadelphia in an ugly game? And Sunday night, 2 nights ago, the weather wasn't even that bad, and they were useless. They couldn't move the ball at all. Philly is so much more physical, so I am going to have Philly moving on to face the Rams.
My NFC divisional round, a couple of fun matchups. Obviously, once we get the going gets tough like this, we're going to get fun matchups across the board. But like we just saw, number 6 Detroit going to number 1 Philly. This game obviously just happened Sunday night, like you said, 16-6, I believe was the final score. The reason why I think this game could go different is because Detroit was 0-5 on 4th down. And I don't expect them to go 0-5 on 4th down that often. And if, they convert one in the end zone, they get another one that sets up a field goal, you're looking at a tie game and maybe things go differently. But I also think Philly had a down night offensively as well, too. So I say Philly gets the victory. I don't think it'd be 16-6. I think we're probably looking more closer to 20s for both teams. But Philly does get the victory here and moves on to the NFC Championship. And then 5 versus 2 is the Rams going up to Seattle, which would be a fun one. I think this game being in Seattle plays a huge effect. Weather obviously is always interesting there. It's not always snowy, but we do get a lot of rain, a lot of weather once we get into that January time. And I think it's interesting with both these teams because both of them have a very like play action heavy type offense where they run the ball? Do they want to run the ball? You don't really know with both these teams. And I think in this game, it's going to be more of that, oh shit, we kind of have to run the football. And Seattle's defense is the one that I trust when it comes down to that situation. So I'll say Seattle gets a victory. I do think this one is ugly. I think this is a more variable type game here that could go either way. But I have Seattle getting the victory and moving on to the NFC Championship, which sets up Seattle versus Philly.
All right.
Go ahead. Who's going to the Super Bowl from the NFC side?
So I got the Rams hosting Philly, and what might be the game of the year if this happens. Philly got them once earlier this year, and what was Matt Stafford probably his worst game of the year. So here's the thing, man. When I watched LA, I don't see them having a hard time getting the ball to Kyron 20 times, getting the ball to Puka 12 times, getting the ball to Devontae Adams in the end zone. When I watch Philly, though, shit, dude, every other night it seems like they have a really hard time scoring 20 points. Last year, the Rams almost got them. So I'm going to flip the script, you know? Obviously, LA and Philly are going to put up a ton of points in a game like this. Philly has done well on the road. They've done well, neutral site, especially California. But I am going to go with the Rams this year. I wanted to change it, things up, I guess, you know? Maybe I'm just holding on to history too much, but I feel like when there's a very good regular season matchup that comes back up in a game like this, a lot of the times it'll either go to the better quarterback or whoever lost last time. And I think Matt Stafford is a guy I'm going to trust a little more in the NFC Championship, especially if we're talking about him up for MVP. This could be, you know, the perfect storm. His last season, maybe.
NFC Championship for me. Seattle going to Philly. This is a tough matchup for Philly, or not for Philly, for Seattle, of course. Going into Philly is not going to be fun. I think we actually saw this matchup back in like 2018, but it might have been even like Mark Sanchez playing in this game or something like that. But I do remember like a wild card game of Seattle going to Philly. I think it was Russell Wilson versus Foles or something like that. But regardless, way different game here. I do think Seattle's defense just plays in a good spot against Philly. Run heavy, you know, if we're going to pass, we're going to take a shot type offense with Philadelphia. Seattle is a bit different in that. I know they love their deep shots. They just added Rashid Shaheed as well too, which adds into that factor. But even just having a third down guy like Cooper Kupp, I think plays into Seattle's hand quite a bit. I think I'd pick Philly 8 times out of 10, but I did pick Seattle to win this game. Maybe it's just narrative ball because I wanted to see Sam Darnold versus Daniel Jones in the Super Bowl.
That would be sick.
That would be ridiculous. Both failed quarterbacks for 2 New York teams go to different spots and they hit their stuff off. So that's what I'm going to do. Indianapolis versus Seattle, Super Bowl in the Bay Area. That's what we get. Wow.
Yeah.
Who's winning the Super Bowl for you?
All right. Well, I got the Rams and Buffalo in this one. Right off the bat, you mentioned it, right? This game's in Northern California. Immediate advantage for the Rams. They play there every single year. And even though there's the joke about Levi South and, you know, or SoFi North, whatever you want to say, they've played their fair share of games there. I also think that Sean McVay going up against Josh Allen would be sick, right? This would be an incredible matchup. I think I would take the Rams, though. This kind of reminds me of, and I know I'm going way back, but like whenever Dan Marino would play like one of Mike Ditka's teams, he could have a perfect day passing and still lose by 30 points just because they got out coached. And that's how I feel like Sean McVay and Matt Stafford and Puka and all those guys would play against Buffalo. Buffalo obviously gets a little lucky in our scenario. They haven't had the best season. So my winner's going to come from the NFC this year.
My Super Bowl. Colts and the Seahawks, obviously fun narrative bowl. QB narratives are going to be off the chart here. There's going to be some crazy ESPN stories or something like that Daniel Jones and Sam Darnold actually had dinner during the offseason to discuss their New York troubles or some weird shit like that. But regardless, there's a game to play here that we actually, I believe, get to see later in the season. I think it's like week 16 these two teams play. I think Indianapolis has an edge here. I think Seattle's run defense is obviously really good. But when it comes down to it, Indianapolis's pass defense isn't bad either. Their defense has also been super opportunistic throughout the year. I think even special teams leads in their favor as well too. So I'm going to go Indianapolis wins the Super Bowl. And if there's any team that can run the ball in Seattle, it's going to be the Colts. They're not afraid to do it. They've been good on it all year. And I think that's, passing wins you games in October, but running the damn ball wins you games in January. And that's what we've seen in the past. So Indianapolis gets to win in the Super Bowl MVP, Daniel Jones, because why the fuck not? We get to do it, might as well. All right. On to some college football. We got about 15 minutes, I'd say.
All right, so week 13 coming up, almost done, right? The college season went by so fast this season. This is one of those weeks where the SEC kind of has like a week off, like Texas A&M is playing Samford, Georgia's playing Charlotte, but we do have a couple of good games we can talk about. We'll start off with an old favorite, a game that used to always be the Pac-10/12 championship. Oregon is hosting number 17 USC. Oregon's a 10-point favorite in this one. Dante Moore, much better last week. I know he had a couple rough weeks, but he's been making some NFL throws. Mayava has got to make a name for himself before the season ends, too. Should be a great game. Of course, I would pick Oregon, though. I think they're definitely a playoff team this year. After that, there's some night games of double-ranked teams that are okay. I don't know if they're playoff caliber, but 22 Pitt is going to 16 Georgia Tech, who's 9-1. Haynes King has had a great year. Pittsburgh had to pull the plug on their guy and go with a true freshman who's been playing pretty well. So winner of this goes to the ACC championship game. That's pretty important. And then also a Big 12 game at night. Number 12 BYU, they did lose to Texas Tech, who's been just a juggernaut. Like, I guess we found out what happens when a team like Texas Tech gets $1 billion to spend in the portal. They go to the playoff. That's what happens. They're going to 25 Cincinnati, 7-3. Playoff hopes are done. But an interesting quarterback prospect, Brendan Sorsby. We haven't talked a lot about him, but he's like 6'4", 240, likes to run people over. So I'm definitely gonna tune into that game. I don't know if Mr. Bachmeier throws the ball enough to, take this team to the playoffs. But basically, the important stuff, right? Next week's week 14. That's the rivalry week. After that, we will have some Heisman picks, hopefully. Right now, it seems like there's about 5 quarterbacks, a linebacker, and a running back, and one of those quarterbacks is going to win it. But we got to wait and see who plays well during the rivalry game.
Yeah. Fun end of the college football season coming up for sure over these next couple of weeks. Always is, always will be. And I've got some boring free agency stuff to just talk about in the MLB because we do have some lighter stuff. I guess we did have a couple decent moves. Biggest one, of course, being Josh Naylor returning back to the Seattle Mariners on a 5-year, $92 million deal. A bit less money than I expected. But all right, good for them. Get them under contract. Maybe that means that they're not bringing back Geno Suarez. We'll see how that goes. There's some contract predictions of Geno Suarez to the A's, so maybe that opens that up if that comes down to it. We did have a bunch, 4 people actually agreed to the qualifying offer. First of which being Shota Imanaga. I think I predicted him to go to the Giants. That obviously can't happen anymore. He accepts the 1-year, $22 million deal there. Gleyber Torres accepted it as well, too, with the Tigers, which I think is interesting. Probably could have gotten some pretty good money out in the open market. Instead of hitting free agency at 29, he will now hit that 30 unless he signs a long-term deal with the Tigers there. Brandon Woodruff does it as well, too. 33 years old, agrees to the qualified offer back to the Brewers. Woodruff probably could have gotten more money, but why switch it up, I guess, if you've been with the team for so long in your career. And then Trent Grisham agrees as well, too. I think his plan, perhaps, if he believes he can have another good season, is do this again, probably go out and get 100 million plus from a team next year. And this year, if he just went out and did it, probably not going to get that much because he's only had really one good year in the MLB. Other stuff besides that, we had a whole bunch of designated for assignments, contracts selected from the minors. One interesting one I noted, Josh White from the Miami Marlins contract got selected. He went to Cal, went to Monte Vista, faced him in high school. Pitcher. He was good in high school, obviously.
On the 40 man?
Yeah, he got selected in the 40 man, which is
nice.
kind of cool, I guess. And I didn't even really realize. I knew he was with the Marlins, but I didn't realize he was like that close to the big leagues. But good for him, I guess. Haven't seen what his stuff looks like nowadays. So, anyways, moving on to Layups Pool predictions. We got a while here because it's 2 weeks of stuff. Even with last week, us not doing an episode, we still made picks prior because we were going to do the show before I canceled out kind of last minute. But regardless, 2 weeks ago, the layups were okay. I had Houston money line versus who'd they play?
Who did Davis Mills beat first?
Oh, the Jags. They beat the Jags. That's who it was. That goes green. Skyler had BYU plus 10.5 versus Texas Tech. That did not happen. This week we were good. I had Chicago plus 3.5 versus the Vikings. They win the game outright, so that's good there. Skyler had UGA minus 6.5 versus Texas and Arch Manning. They very much handled the Manning man there. And this week, I have New England minus 8 versus Cincinnati. No Jamar Chase. I think obviously bodes well for the Patriots. Going to be a good matchup. And New England should be able to do whatever the fuck they want to against them. And I think that's why I have it being a blowout.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I think if Burrow and Chase were playing, this would be an excellent game, but not the case. They're not going to keep up with them. I got Kansas City minus 3.5 against Indy. We just talked about it. I basically picked them twice in a row to beat Indy in our predictions just a couple minutes ago. So they should be able to get the job done if they're serious about making a playoff push, right? Or guys are going to get fired from Kansas City. You can't go under 500.
Full predictions. 2 weeks ago, I had Niners money line plus 160 against the Rams. They actually kind of got boat raced in this one. The Rams just did not get stopped throughout the day. So that goes red. Skyler had Philly plus 115 versus Green Bay. Good pick there. They get the win on Monday night in Green Bay. Last week, I had Seattle money line plus 150 against the Rams. Obviously did not happen. I think I even picked the Rams in our pool. I just like the plus 150 for a really good team. When you have a chance to take them plus money, I think that's a good idea to do, even if you don't think they're going to win the game. I think it's good value there, even though they lose. Skyler had Chicago plus 140 against the Minnesota Vikings, and obviously that goes green.
Sorry, Nine.
As did, yeah. Yeah, we could talk about him another day. Regardless, that goes green. This week, I have Arizona plus 130 against Jacksonville. Jacksonville's still super banged up. I know they're coming off of a big victory against the Chargers, but I always feel like it's a good idea to take the money line of the team that just underperformed against the team that just overperformed. I think usually get some weird odds there. And that's a situation that we have with Arizona plus 130 this week.
Okay. Also, shout out Jacoby Brissett for breaking that record. I don't think anybody anywhere has mentioned it all week because they got killed, of course, but
yeah,
still impressive, right?
It's true.
All right. Well, my bold prediction, I got some college football, a Big Ten game. Nobody really cares about it anymore because of the circumstances of the teams. Nebraska is going to win at Penn State. That's plus 290. Penn State has played okay despite all the distractions and their coach being fired. Drew Aller's out for the season. Nebraska, though, no Dylan Raiola. He also broke his leg. He's out for the year. But their backup, TJ Lateef, there's rumors he might just outright take the job and make Raiola transfer somewhere else. So I am going to stick with Nebraska. They actually are playing for something. They're still having a good season. So I definitely think they could get this upset win.
That's going to do it for episode 269. Next week, 270. Hopefully some MLB stuff. Obviously, a week closer in college football to the playoffs, so we'll get some interesting stuff there. There's obviously a ton of big games and maybe some chokers this week. NFL, big slate this week as well, too, which will be fun to see how we are able to react to that. Probably power rankings. Haven't done those in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
But that'll do it. Any closing remarks?
Shout out to Steph Curry and Moses Moody shooting the lights out of the rock this season.
Yeah. Steph, as always, even in a 2-point victory, or when he had like 4 points, whatever, a couple of days ago against the Pelicans. But before that, did what he needed to do against the Spurs, back-to-back games. And I think he's having a good night right now against the Magic.
Yeah, pretty good. It's just the same story as usual, dude. The entire league is going to be injured up until the All-Star break. It's unfortunate, but that's how it's been playing out.
As Steph breaks a 3. Regardless, that'll do it. We'll see you guys next week, episode 270.
Adios.